are you deciding to run?
Um, well, that's a pretty big question with a pretty big answer, because it encompasses a large number of things. It's for the same reason that I fight for the issues that I fight for every single day, including a living wage, fair and equal housing opportunities, expanded voting rights. Things that I do in my personal life without being a legislator. But it goes beyond that too, because it actually speaks to what I believe is the failure of our local state party to demand more. We've as Democrats in this state, we've often negotiated from a place of no power during the majority of my lifetime. The past 20 years. But that really doesn't have to be the case. We've witnessed Democrats and other Republican chambers attain more for their constituency just because they argue for it. I believe we can follow their examples and be bolder, than a lot of our current Democrats have been. And I think that also what's important, whenever we talk about the same things, is because whenever I'm wanting to run, I'm thinking of the next 20 years, my community for the next 20 years. And one part of that is I also think that another failing of, our past Democrats has been that I'm part of the future Democrats. So they have not really done the job to prepare the next generation the way that, leaders should. And, I believe that, if elected to this position, in 10 years, I will have helped raise up my alternative. And I think that, that's part of being a good leader, is to prepare the next generation to replace you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that answer. And when I was speaking with you yesterday over Messenger, you were telling me that your upbringing has a lot to do with why you decided to run today. So if you just don't mind telling me a little bit about that, please.
Yes. Well, see, I was born to a tribe of Native Americans located in southwest Alabama, called the Mowat Choctaw. At the time I was born, the tribe was probably around 85% in poverty. But my mother, through her hard work, determination, and sacrifice, had managed to pull my family into the lower middle class. And we moved here to Bibb County in Georgia so that she could provide me with opportunities that didn't exist in the backwoods of Alabama. And because, again, of that hard work and sacrifice, I was provided for a time a very comfortable upbringing. But when I was about 10 years old, everything started to change. See, my mother, she became chronically ill. And I observed over the next 8 years of my life as, actually longer than that. She only passed in 2018, but I observed over, the next decade of my life as she continued to work, not just hard, but actually harder than ever before, as she continued to make sacrifices in order to try and get ahead, but slowly but surely, through no fault of her own, every single thing she had ever worked for or sacrificed to achieve for herself or her children or grandchildren slipped away. And that really opened my eyes to the need for deeper forms of social and economic justice. So in around 2015, whenever I was able to just figure out a way to begin activism in this community, I became the only advocate here locally until this year, actually, when 9 to 5 came. And I was the only advocate for a living wage here in town, for a codified living wage. And through it, I became a member of the Democratic Party. I started to interact with and speak to, our local delegation, leadership inside of the commission, and other offices. And what I really found was there was no thirst for better. What really opened my eye, what really came to it from these experiences was that we have 28% poverty in Bibb County. We have high poverty rates in, Wilkinson and Washington County, and the majority of this district, specifically because our leaders don't demand better for us. And so that really, has led me to where I am right here today. The desire to do better for everyone. I am the first ever Native American to run for the state Senate. And I'm the first ever Native American to run as a Democrat in Georgia. And one reason for that is because the parties and the political systems, especially here, doesn't really reach out to people like me. I've spent the majority of my life too white to be black and too black to be white, just an outsider within a community that I desire to call my own. I think that that's part of our political culture. And the only way to do that is to have new leaders change.
Mm-hmm. When did you move to Bibb County?
I was 7 years old. It was the summer of 1999.
1999. All right, I got you. Where'd you go to high school, college?
Well, I went to high school. Well, I graduated out of Howard. I initially went to Central, because Howard wasn't built at first. Mm-hmm. And I went to college at CTTC, but I actually had to drop out because my mother was so sick. So instead I became self-educated I earned my own insurance license, taught myself into the doors of New York life. And I stayed there until my sister passed in 2018. And then I left to, spend more time with my mother before she passed later that same year.
Oh, right. So, what's your current occupation?
Well, actually, due to this pandemic, like many people, I am currently unemployed. But my occupation would be independent contractor. I've done construction work and just general logistics ever since I left New York life.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say that you work as a construction worker or an independent contractor.
It'd be more accurate to say independent contractor, just because I do more than just construction work. And honestly, I've been trying to ramp down on the construction work, so I don't really want to advertise that I do construction because, well, before COVID happened, I was trying to ramp down because I used to get pneumonia all the time from the particles on job sites. And so it was just recommended to me by my doctor that I do much less of that
work. Okay. So what have you been doing lately, just with everything going on?
More to the logistics and delivery side of things. But with everything, with COVID going on, I've not really had any contracts or any work.
Yes, sir. All right. And then my next question for you, have you ever done anything in the past that's involved politics, or is this the first time you're kind of jumping into things?
I've been in the leadership of the local Democratic Party since 2017. I was the vice chair up until the middle of 2019, whenever I resigned in order to focus more on the electoral side of politics. I still serve on that board, just not in the leadership capacity that I used to. And like I had mentioned earlier, I've been the only advocate. Well, again, until recently, I was the only advocate for a living wage and issues of certain workers' rights issues here inside of the local community for about 5 years.
Okay, and just kind of segueing, the biggest thing that they're going to be working on in Atlanta is definitely going to be the budget. And we are facing a huge shortfall just due to the pandemics.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to start the argument against the budget cuts. I mean, the odds are that the Republicans will get their way and make the budget cuts, but we can't go silently into the night on this, because the fact is there are so many things that need to be more deeply funded coming out of this virus, because we're going to be in recovery. And honestly, we may be able to make the case, but we'll never know if we don't try. But we may be able to make the case that, we can't make these cuts in time if we really involve the public. But assuming the Republicans can get their way, I'm going to fight as hard as I can to protect our education systems. Higher education learning is one. Higher education system is one particular institution that I think that our leaders have left incredibly vulnerable. Often they've supported private higher education, while Republicans dismantle public university education. So I think that we have to really coalesce around protecting that particular institution, because I think they're going to make deep cuts to it. I think we're going to have to really join hands and lock around protecting our social services. Food stamps and other benefits to the poor are often one of the first areas that people want to make cuts. And right now, coming again off of this virus, with people being so heavily impacted and so heavily in need, these are going to be services that will need our protection more. But if we could get the public on our side, say it goes the other way, the public's more involved because this virus, has touched so many people. It could be the case that we can finally get those higher taxes on the upper earners that we've been trying to get, to prevent these cuts. It really, in a way, it's too early to say exactly how it's going to go, but in another way, it's not, because you have to be prepared for whichever way the wind starts to blow, and you have to learn to negotiate from the position that you're in. So, I'm looking to read the ripples in the water, so to speak, and see where it goes. But I've got a plan for each situation. And as for trying to get some things specific to this virus as well, I think that there's a strong case to be made for establishing a public fund for legal defenses for people directly impacted by COVID-19. People need lawyers for everything, but whenever massive numbers of people are affected by a legal problem, everyone needs a lawyer for the same thing. And I think that it's the responsibility of the state to establish the infrastructure to provide for that.
Thank you very much. And my next question is, the case of Ahmaud Arbery, that has been something that's been in the headlines for a very long time, and it's brought back up the conversation for hate crime laws in Georgia.